Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mile High Sports Symposium. I am JT Matthews at JTMatthews01 on Twitter, and I'm here with the doctor, Nicholas Manning at DR_and Manning on Twitter as well. Doc, happy Wednesday. How you doing? How you feeling? It's a nice day out there.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I have not been able to be outside since like 12 though. 2 hours is 2 hours, but the times I was able to be out there, it was glorious, and I feel like it's supposed to stay like that for a bit. So, yeah, keep shining, dog. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. It's getting towards the end of school year. It's kind of weird, but it seems like this year's gone super fast. It's been a weird year to say the very least, but the fact that the kids are almost out of school is pretty trippy. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm glad to not have to do like the 6 a.m. wake up, kids, all the stuff. That said, They also are going to bother me. So
for sure, 100%. That's just what they do, man.
That's what they do. That's true.
That's how they roll. They're doing it, kids, so we love our kids, but you understand the plight
for sure.
of I love them when
stress is relative, and they they cause it regardless of how much you love them.
Yeah,
of course it could be worse. We got to be grateful.
Of course.
Count your blessings, all the stuff, and also they are a little bit of a pain.
Yeah, for sure. They always say too much of a good thing is real. So let's just
not a good thing.
We'll leave it at that. Without getting too into the weeds with that. We got lots to talk about today. We got Rockies. We're gonna start off with some Rockies talk, I think, which is I wish we were talking for all the right reasons, but we're gonna be talking about the Rockies for all the wrong reasons. We're gonna talk about the Nuggets. Kind of the same feel for the Nuggets right now. I mean, at least they're in the playoffs, so that's far and away better than the Rockies. And then we have some Broncos talk at the end, some potential schedule talk, some rookie minicamp talk, and just some feelings about the team in general. So let's jump off and start with the Colorado Rockies. Bud Black was fired. The Rockies have 7 wins on the season. I think they're 7-35, something like that. And, looking like they're trending towards the 100 loss club, maybe on that to take it all, be the worst all-time team ever. It's a tough thing. I think everyone understands how great Rockies games are. I would like to support it. What's a bad position to be in as a fan when you have lost faith in the ship and the front office and kind of in all facets of actual side of the entertainment value of being at the stadium. Not really much value to that team as far as it's just kind of it. I feel we can't support this team in a ways because then we're supporting ownership. And do you feel that way? Do you feel like it should be diehards to the end? What's your take on this?
Yeah, it's man. Well,
I know because first of all, I want to say just you are a baseball lover of the game.
I love good baseball.
Especially
good baseball is like is wonderful. It's the nuances of all of it. I mean, just how hard it is of a sport to do. Hitting a baseball is hard. Let alone a curveball, let alone 96, like all of the stuff. And the Rockies had it's a youthful team, and there was some promise. We talked about Zach Veen, who was kind of blistering out of the gate, and Chase Dollander, who actually pitched really well, had a no-hitter going into like the 6th last night. I mean, just some really cool stuff. And I mean, this is the worst the worst, what has it been? It's been 6 weeks, 6 weeks, something, 6 weeks maybe, of, if you think about the Nuggets or the Broncos or that, like the first 6 weeks of the season, have you ever felt this needed in any other, like maybe those really bad Nugget teams before Melo? Anthony Goldwire and guys like Keon Clark. I mean, Keon Clark was a hooper, but it's not a good team. That was that's really the only thing I can think about. I mean, the Buffs from a couple of years ago, where it was just not good. How you average when you play every day and you average 1 win a week. When the worst baseball teams double that in wins. And so I like how you continue, because there were 30, when the 21-0 game there, so like 30,000 people there. And like and hung in throughout, and I love the stadium. I think it's great. And it's hard because I'll never tell anyone how to fan, but I'll judge you. That is for sure. I will judge you, and I will smite you, smote. It's, Bud Black. I warm heart Bud Black. That those teams, the 17-18 Rocky teams were the best 2 teams in totality that I've seen in the Colorado baseball. Those were they had good pitching, they had good bullpens, they had great defense, good hitting. I mean, those were like the probably the most well-rounded teams. He needed to go for his own. Like, why are you still here? Like I get it's a check. Blood Black's got to be like 70 something. Like, what do you?
Right.
Is it really like you addicted to the game? As you just don't like your wife? Like, why are you not at home on a beach? And so I appreciate that moves were made. I think we all understand that, it's not even like the and I've said this and I'll say it a ton. The Monforts as owners aren't the problem. It's the Monforts running the baseball that's a problem, right? So they no business. You got the rooftop bar. You got all this stuff. All of that stuff. The field. They do all their promotion nights. They do a great job with that. They refuse to really challenge themselves and bring in an outside voice who would disrupt the status quo. And so they're their own worst enemy. And it really is, it's not a lack of want to be honest. They spend money, just not, they don't build a baseball team the way a mid-market team does with field, challenges. And it's not necessarily the altitude, but Coors Field itself is a challenge. It's just like if you are in New York, with that sandbox that they have in left field or right field, right? It's like 305. I don't like cheap home runs all the time, or the Green Monster, or, you build a team to try and take advantage of 81 games a year. And for the love of us, they won't do that here, I guess. And developing in player development where there's much more scientific ways for folks to be able to pitch at altitude on a consistent basis. We saw it with Kyle Freeland with a 2.8 ERA and Ubaldo Jimenez with a 2.8. Like, those are good ERAs no matter where they're at. The fact that you have guys that leave here, and you look at Jeff Hoffman or Carlos Estevez, who was an all-star for the Angels. Like, and that's not exactly a thriving organization either for the most part, but they know enough baseball where that guy was able to become an all-star closer, even though he was given every opportunity here to do it. Like, light bulb went on at 31 because he got good baseball development. And so it's hard. It's, I just saw a post of like, they should have the Savannah Bananas and the Rockies play, and whoever wins gets gets promoted to play baseball in at Coors Field, or gets demoted, has to go to the show. And it's like, it's those jokes about the 0-16 Lions and like, could Alabama beat them? And the fact that that's even like, that's a joke, like that's a relatable joke that some people would consider an answer, like a showman league, like the Bananas don't play real baseball. Yeah. So all of the things I don't want to spend any more time on it. It's hard, and I won't participate in watching or going to the field until I feel confident in a direction, regardless of how cool it would be to take my kids. I love the stadium and all the stuff. And it's not the player's fault. Like, but really, until you hurt pocketbooks, if they're printing money over there, why would they stop? I don't blame them. If I owned it, all the things, if people are still showing up, then, you baseball people aren't the reason why we're not, why people aren't coming. So it's thank goodness none of the other 3 major sports teams, or even CU or CSU, have that kind of inept leadership, and which I feel really good about, because at least those teams, even if they have a rough season, it will be a season, and there's a commitment to doing what needs to be done to win again. That isn't the case with the Rockies, for sure.
No, definitely not. It's a tough place to be as a fan. I am much more a fair weather fan of baseball, just Rockies. I loved the Arenado teams. Back in the days, obviously the Blake Street Bombers, when they were good. I was paying attention. But man, it's just like I couldn't be more disinterested in a local sports team than I am the Rockies right now, and that includes the collegiate level. I'm more interested to see what's going on with the CSU Rams football team than I am with the Colorado Rockies. I think that is a problem. I think it's a problem with one of your 4 major sports teams. The other 3 teams are pushing and competing. Obviously the Broncos has some downers, but they never felt like they weren't trying to win.
Yeah, there was a commitment to winning, and even when there was failure, there was a like that they want to get it right. They're just struggling, and then when you get an ownership group to come in, there's no doubt that they want to win, and you see the plan happen for all of the Cronkies issues, them putting an effort in getting a winner, right? Like their 2 teams have been to the playoffs the last decade, even the Rams, right? There's a commitment to excellence in LA for those guys. I don't know anything about Arsenal and whether or not they win, but I would bet that they're a good sports ownership group. TV deals aside, has nothing to do with how they run the business or the sports teams. Yeah, it's I'd rather watch Rapids soccer, and that has and they even are a team that's kind of reinvented themselves and pushing for that. So give me high school football. It's rough. Which again, it's high school baseball. Give me high level, competent, kid baseball where like there's all this stuff, and I hope for the guys, because this can get turned around with some of the players that are there, and I hope that they don't lose, and and hopefully those guys keep the passion to do it and continue to turn the corner. But let's speaking of turn the corner, let's turn the corner to a team that doesn't make me mad.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the Nuggets. Nuggets are behind 3-2 in series versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Really tough game last night. Nuggets looked a bit like the Nuggets of old. Was doing it all out there, hitting 3-pointers. And then in the 4th quarter, they couldn't score. Just want to get your feeling on this series. First, I want to just say, percentage-wise, give me a percentage of hope that you have that the Nuggets can turn this series around.
Of hope, I have a 60% chance. I feel hopeful that they could. My prediction scale, 50-50. You know, I think if they really come out, I think if they come out tough, because really, I think either way, you had to win 2 out of the next 3. Now you just got to win the next 2. And really, outside of one game, for the most part, like they've been the better team for totality in 4 of the 5 games. And you know, playoff Murray looked great for 3 quarters. If he can look great instead of first, second, and third, the second, third, and fourth, then the Nuggets win. You know, and if they win Game 6, to be honest with you, we thought there was gonna be a much more competitive Game 7 with the Clippers, and the Nuggets turned it up. They've played some really great defense as of late, and I think if they can continue to do that, you know, there's a good chance that Aaron Gordon and Jokic have a great game together, and Murray and Jokic have a great game together. You know, and if 2 guys go off and they play really good defense, and Jokic plays like he did this last game again 2 times, I think you have a pretty good shot. He's the best player on the floor. Love Shea. I think Shea's a great player, and you know, even when Jokic is bad, he's great. And his game yesterday was just like, oh yeah, there he is. You know, there's the guy that stirs not only the drink, but you can just tell he dictates so much of the game, that it's when he's on, it really is a different, they're a different animal, right? And then they all of a sudden are up 8, up 11, up all that kind of stuff, and a lot of that had to do with just him playing the way that he can play. And so now, you know, you need guys to contribute just a little bit more, and they can. I don't know that they will, but I'm going into Game 6 assuming a win. I think that they have every opportunity to hold serve, and then in Game 7, it is what it is. They should have won Game 5 in Oklahoma City. They won Game 1 in Oklahoma City, Game 1, right? And so they played well on their floor. So, you know, outside of getting ransacked in Game 2, they're not scared to play on their floor, and so we'll see. But I think we recognize that Oklahoma City is the better team when you look at top to bottom, what they can throw at it, all that kind of stuff. Even coaching and like, there's just I definitely have lost the hope that Dave Adelman will be the coach moving forward. I think, you know, you ran Jokic in the ground and you saw guys are heavy legged. What Michael Porter Jr. is giving you when he's 0 for 10 shooting threes, and the reason why he's on the floor is because he's a shooter. Right. Like, what are we doing? You know, I'd rather have Peyton Watson's effort and defense and energy than Michael Porter Jr.'s one arm. Like, how is he playing 35 minutes? Or Westbrook? Yep. I mean, or give me Jalen Pickett, like guys that can contribute in one way, shape, or form. He's one arm. You know, if someone else can't get a rebound with 2 hands that he can get with one, like, what are we doing? What are we doing here, guys? You know, I mean, DeAndre Jordan. Yeah. At least he's got, you know, that it's just, and I get it, but he's your best shooter when he is right. He's not right, and now he is a detriment to the team, and how we're not recognizing that. He's had 1 good game out of 5. He's injured. Like, I know you're coaching for your life, but maybe like a coach, you know, utilize the opportunity to coach.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like that was the biggest mistake last night was forcing MPJ out there. I understand you need 3-point shooting, but you need something. As far as that, he's been a huge negative factor defensively, but you do see the impact that Schroeder has on his ability to mix it up a little bit, his ability to rebound, his ability to contest shots. And I think that's just his fault necessarily. No. And I don't think anyone doubts that piece of the puzzle. The problem is you've got guys that are healthy that can get you a basket. You know, maybe you feel worse about their ability to get you a three ball, and I get that. You know, he's pretty arguably the best 3-point shooter on the team if you don't, maybe Jamal's better, but I think as far as volume and the ability to get hot, that's MPJ.
He's the most consistent. He's your most consistent shooter, and
that's his role
during the regular season. But he's not right now, and I think,
right.
They know it. Like, you're not blind in there. It's not like anything that we recognize on TV. He's not recognizing. So what the pressures are to keep him in there or what have you, and I at least tell me from when I saw Peyton Watson had one really dumb play yesterday and then came back and had like 5 possessions in a row where he was impactful.
Yeah.
I'll take that trade off. Like, what am I missing here? Like, what do I see when they come out and play basketball? I've seen DeAndre Jordan give good minutes in this playoffs. So, and maybe is Oklahoma City respecting his shot right now? I don't think so. They're packing the lane, like, and so it's not working. His decoyness isn't working. He wasn't a good defender before. He's definitely not better now. He gives you length, but if he has one arm, how much length is that? Your wingspan is impacted by whether or not you have access to both. And I really just, I hope. What about you? Do you think that, do you think they get game 6?
I think they can. I don't know that they will. I think they can for sure. I would like to think that they will. Someone's got to come alongside Jamal and Jokic for this team to be at its best. They showed up yesterday. They show up for the full 4 quarters. I mean, you could argue that Jamal fell off. You could argue Jokic fell off. I think that those are both true. But they needed someone else to help pick up the slack. And person wasn't really available. We had good moments from Peyton Watson. We had moments from Julian Strawther. Russ was kind of a non-factor generally. But, is that someone that you feel like he might be able to throw out a late game and he can give you something, even if it's not. The one thing I will say about Russ is that he can't impact the game without the ball in his hands. And I think, especially on the defensive glass, I think, on the ball, trying to get turnovers. You're not going to see that from MPJ. You might get a good contest. He might be able to keep, a good body position on defense, cut off like that. But even when it helps right now with one arm really limited, how you can impact a shot. And they've got to minimize mistakes. Some turnovers in the Jamal with a bad foul late and kind of in the landing zone. They got him free throws and kind of took the momentum away from the Nuggets. Any momentum that they had built up to that, but just a lot of small mistakes that are building up into something that you're not going to be able to overcome. And someone's got to be able to give that team a spark. Jokic. You'd think Jokic coming alive would be that spark, but you also have to have people on the floor, and it has to take a look in the mirror and say, is 50% of MPJ more impactful in late game than 100% of Peyton Watson or 100% of Julian Strawther, whoever it is, whoever they decide to go out there. It's going to be a defining game for them. If they can win this game, then my hope meter kind of up for game 7. I've seen the team win a ton of games. I've seen this team overcome odds in multiple seasons. They find a way to win. I think that if you keep a game close, then they can find a way to win. But you got to give that opportunity. You're going to take a full team effort. You've got to be able to get everything out of all of your guys, not just 2 or 3 minutes here and there. Christian Brown started out shooting the ball pretty well last night, and then his offense disappeared. Peyton Watson, I think probably more due to minutes, was in the game and was impactful. Hit a 3 in the corner, had some great contests, had a great offensive rebound where he essentially jumped over SGA. They're huge, and he's kind of quiet second half. Russell Westbrook puts in his minutes, but doesn't really put up much statistically. Those guys have to show up, and they have to bring this team to the next level. You know, when we had in our championships, there was consistency with what he brought. You know, he wasn't world beater. You know, but he came in what he was supposed to do. He hit some shots, played defense, do what you were going to get. You have to just roll out your best, whatever that may be, and give them the minutes so that they can kind of run alongside those starters and give them enough of a break going into the fourth quarter in this game that you're it's going to be tough. My percentage of us winning this series is probably higher than consensus if you talk nationally, but I would say like 35%. I feel like if you could get past this game, then it's a good time, right? Like, it depends on who shows. And, you know, your MVP carry you to a by himself, potentially. Maybe that's what you need in a game 7. We'll see. But game 6 is going to be really difficult, and they're going to try and you know, put the hammer on the nail and send us home. I'm worried. I'm nervous. Do I think we could do it? Absolutely. I've seen this team do it, but I'm nervous.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that there's a lot more grit with this team than last year's team.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit more confidence. I would put it at, I'm like 45% that they'll win the series. I think they will win game 6. I think that they will come out as the aggressor. And then the question is just going to be is how much of that carries over to a game 7. The one reason why I am concerned, the reason why I'm concerned the most is they don't get easy buckets. OKC is able to not only get out because of their defensive length and fortitude, but at least my perception has been, I think their coaching staff has done a better job of getting them easy buckets. You know, you get the high-low action with Chet and Hartenstein, and there's not a lot of that in the Denver Nuggets arsenal right now, and that is where like I think coaching comes in. Yes, they're a good defensive team and but they're not the like 80s Pistons and they're not, you know, like the Nuggets missed a ton of open shots lately. They're not like, you know, it's not like they're just locking them down. It's not like a varsity versus JV team here. So, you know, can they get, when OKC gets on a 6-0 run, can Adelman drop something to get them an easy bucket to stop the bleeding and not rely on Jokic getting the ball near the 3-point line, you know, to create some action off of? How can you help him get to the block and spread the defense out so he can go to work a little bit versus the immediate cluster of the defense and double team? So that's my concern. I still feel pretty good about them. I think this is good. It's going to be a good competitive game for the Nuggets. I think that they're going to give their best. And then, like I said, game 7, OKC doesn't want to see the Nuggets in game 7. That's for sure. Mm-hmm. So I think that they'll want to come out and try and end it. And I think if the Nuggets can be in a really good spot going into the second half, I think you got to feel pretty good about their chances to at least get to game 7. But, you know, I'm not overly confident. I'm not predominantly confident that they'll win this series because I do think OKC is a better team. So,
I mean, OKC is doing things to Denver that we haven't really seen be able to do. We've seen other teams play defensive, but it is waves of defense, right? It's your ability to have multiple guys that can cover the same way. You pull a Dort and they operate pretty much the same. Inconsistent, but sometimes clutch 3-point shooting and really physical defense, you know, and you can switch one out for the other and put them on Jamal and just make them make them all have to work all game long.
Yeah.
Same with Hart and Chet. And, I can't think of his name, but the guy that they've had, Cason Wallace, they've had posting up down low with Jokic, just kind of putting bodies on him and continually just, being physical over and over and over. I do think the Nets can recover physically. I think that's something that they need to think about doing, and especially when you have young guys that you can bring off the bench that can absorb some fouls. You have a guy like Christian Brown who is generally pretty good player. He has to be a little careful when he's matched up okay. But as far as having rebounds, I mean, that offensive rebound that Peyton Watson got, he kind of put his body on the line, went and got that ball, probably fouled Shea in a normal regular season game. On Peyton Watson.
Maybe, yeah. but I think you get rewarded a little bit when you hustle, right? Like when you go. I think guys appreciate that. Even the refs, I think that they respect that. Where do we think Giannis is going to land? Let's go randomly. I think he's in Golden State. I think that's where he's going to go. That's my guess.
Man, that's hard. I think I'm getting a lot. But I mean, if you're thinking about draft picks and young assets, like who has more than Oklahoma City right now?
Oh, for sure.
Like it's painful to have.
Would you trade Chet? Would you trade Chet and anyone other than Shea? Yeah, 100%. Like a hot second. Yeah, that would suck, man. And he fits like that team dynamic, right? Like long, athletic, multiple.
Houston could be a good landing spot. They're talking about Durant and Houston a lot.
Yeah, I think his age and all that stuff. Like, I think a guy like Gian, like for some reason, I think Giannis is a guy that would go to a team and mesh better than Durant. That said, Kevin, come to the Nuggets. We got a MPJ package for you. He's older, guys. He's not that good. Just send him to Denver.
Let him in his career.
Yeah,
somewhere quiet.
Quiet. You learn to ski. Picture Kevin Durant skiing.
7 foot dude.
Oh, jeez. That'd be good. That'd be some long skis a bit.
I don't know, but as far as we got a game tomorrow. It's going to be tough, but it's at home. We'll have that.
And PJ won't be a Nugget next year. I'm calling it dibs right now. Will not be a Nugget.
Yeah, we'll get to that once the Nugget season's over. We'll definitely dive into what that looks like. Kind of that no one with PJ, but we'll get to that. Hopefully not next week. Hopefully we continue to push this out. We'll have respond. Let's transition to the Denver Broncos. Rookie has begun. Guys, from all over. I think kind of the buzz right now is mostly around RJ Harvey, how he looks and how explosive he looks, and it sounds like Sean Payton wants to see him as a 3-down back potentially. It sounds like they love him. They love what he can do. And, even though people think that he may have been drafted behind the consensus, Sean Payton doesn't care. He doesn't care where you were drafted, how you got to the team. When you're there, you got an opportunity. It's not like they just for RJ Harvey. I mean, they didn't even really go out. They didn't draft a guy. They haven't gone into free agency and picked anyone up. Even your unrestricted free agents, I don't think they picked up a running back, did that? So, I mean, they really just kind of leave that room as it, unless they make a late addition before camp and before your OTAs and stuff. Right now, this looks like it's going to be in the room, and it looks like it's RJ Harvey's home.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you draft a guy like we said in that draft class in the second round if you don't think he's a 3-down guy. You don't take a gimmick player, especially. Let me rephrase: you don't draft a guy in the second round that deep a draft, etc. If you gimmick guy, if your room looked like the Denver Broncos running back room, like you didn't have the luxury of getting a guy who's going to get 6 touches a game, but will make you think, right? Like, nope, you needed a guy that's going to touch the ball 20 times a game, touching, receiving and rushing, but a guy that you're going to be able to lean on, and the other team cannot dictate their defensive scheme based on, on them being in the lineup like you can with Jaleel. Jaleel's like, he's not helpful in any other way, shape, or form, other than getting the ball. He's not stout enough really to help out. Audrick's not really a receiving threat, so you kind of can eliminate that right now. So you're getting a guy in the second round that you better be convicted that he's a guy that can do a little bit of all of it. I think that the belief that him being a third down option in the receiving game makes me feel better, just because he didn't do it a ton at UCF. And Champagne talked about it. He said, I don't like the Big 12 pro day because they only had him run like 6 routes, which doesn't really help showcase all of the things he can do, which probably worked in the Broncos' favor. And he, I think he's a guy that absolutely will get every opportunity to be the dude. He comes in older than Audric Estime. I think he's about as old as Jaleel, and his physical makeup, what he provides you, right? He is not small, so he's short, but his legs it's Quadzilla's back, as I think Zach Stevens. It's Von Miller style quads. Like, he's not a guy that goes down with first contact. He's a guy that will make you miss in the hole. He's a guy that you're not arm tackling him, and then with a offensive line that it's the lightest guy on the offensive line. I think it's Garrett Bowles. And when Garrett Bowles is your lightest lineman, it's you got 6'5" Garrett Bowles. I think your center is 6'3", which for a center is pretty tall. Then you got Ben Powers, who's 6'4", 320 or 330. You got Meinertz, who's good, solid 320. We've seen the belly. And then you got 6'9" McGlinchey. Tell me how you're going to find him. You know what I mean? Like, it is going to be difficult for them to be able to flow and fill the appropriate gaps when you can't see where the runner is. And so I think that's going to work with his skill set and the dynamic nature that he brings with his start and stop. So I think he's a good in between of Alvin Kamara and Darren Sproles, in the way that I would look at what he can provide, because he's a little shorter than Alvin, not as polished, I think, as a receiver, but has the jitters that Darren, had. And I think the capability of of kind of utilizing the screen game too with that. Both those guys were great, but just kind of the body type a little bit, but 5'8" as opposed to 5'6" or whatever Darren was, super small. But I think a little bit more stout than Alvin, or a little faster than Alvin was. But I think, like we've seen, if Sean likes a guy, he doesn't just like what he can do, he likes how he can use him. And I think he's one. And I think another player. I appreciate this one. Again, I am leading the Pat Bryant cheer campaign. I think he's just a dog, man. And I think you were able to see at a professional practice, I think, how much more ready he is to contribute than I think people understood, because he went to Illinois and they threw the ball like 300 times, and in college football, that's not very much when they're throwing the ball 600, 650, whatever that might be. And so I think he's going to be able to contribute, and even if that's raising the floor of the room, where if you see Franklin on the floor, on the field, or a Mims or a Vele, I feel better about, well, I really like Pat Bryant. And if they're on the field, that shows that they probably have elevated their game versus like, oh, it's the default, And so I'm excited about that. And then I think the last of note that was really positive was, Jahdae Barron really got looks all over the field, which, how is he going to get used? Is he going to come in and take Riley? But no. He's going to come in and play everywhere, which I think adds just dynamic nature of what he can do versus locking him into one area and having him focus on that. And then, is he that big of an upgrade in the slot of McMillan? You're right. But pick at 20 where the guy is a Swiss Army knife, that's awesome. That inherently, I think, brings up the value of what he can do. And so he might not be an A+ outside corner or A+ slot corner or A+ safety, but he is an A in being able to be the versatile guy that can do all of those things. And so I'm super pumped about his addition and the vision. I think that is that's there for him. So yeah, those are a couple of notes that I'm super excited about. Any other players that you caught wind of or read about, heard about that you wanted to amplify?
No, I think the most hype has been around the top three. I think that it's gonna stay that way, right? I think there's an expectation that Jahdae Barron's a starter somewhere around defensive secondary. I think an expectation that RJ Harvey specifically doesn't get a lot of opportunity, and I think that the more that we see that they're going to kind of fall in love with his all-around game. I mean, I think he's really hanging on his hat on being able to contest catches, and I think that that's something he did really well in college. So I know that is something that we see develop, something that we see come to fruition with his time on the team. I still wonder what that game is going to be. So I think that game is really going to be exciting. I think there's going to be guys pushing for opportunities, and there's going to be a lot of guys pushing for start spots down this roster. It may not be the same field as it's been before, but people is kind of pushing for the same position. It's going to feel like, hey, we've got some physical guys, but who can kind of hit our offense or defense to the next level. How can we make them fit within the scheme of this team? And I think that we have in those top three guys that are ready to come in and compete and push. I don't think it's a lock that Bailey or receiver, or where I feel like he might slot it. I think that it's a lock that McMillan's going to be your starting nickel back. I think that there's a chance that Riley Moss gets booted from the starting unit. So I think that there's exciting amount of competition that's going to be happening from our big unit on that defense, and then just adding to the arsenal of Bo Nix and giving him the opportunity to kind of be explosive on the offensive side of the ball. Wanted to get your take on what you think the best offseason acquisition has been for his team. You had sent me an article, and the Broncos' overall grade was an A for their offseason thus far. I would tend to agree. I think they've added a lot of good pieces. Who do you think will be the most impactful piece next season, including your Ravens, including your rookies?
Oh, that's good. Who is going to be the most impactful? That is tough. They made some really good moves all the way kind of across the board. Who the most would be, to be honest, I'd say most impactful, like singularly impactful, will be Evan Ingram. I think even last year when he was healthy, he essentially got like wide receiver 2 targets and produced as such. And so when you're adding a wide receiver 2 kind of caliber player at tight end, we haven't had that. Name the last time that we were running around a potential Pro Bowler at tight end. Like Julius Thomas was the last time, 2014. So it's been 2014 that we've had that we felt if we go on the field that we have an advantage over the linebackers or the secondary at tight end. So we had Noah Fant. Noah Fant, was okay. But I don't know if we ever went into games being like, man, like this Noah Fant about to pop off. Like I never felt like that for sure. And so I think that he's going to have the biggest impact. I think directly visible impact that, yeah. I think the intangible impact that Talanoa Hufanga and or Dre Greenlaw are both of them, what they're going to do to the mentality of the defense. I think you might not see it in statistics. You might not see Hufanga lead the NFL in interceptions or Dre Greenlaw leading in tackles, but I think that there will be an elevated, not only level of professionalism and leadership, but tenacity. And then finally, I think, what RJ Harvey, I think what the vision is, if realized, I mean, we haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2018 or 2019. In Philip Lindsay. So really 18 and 19 were last times that you really had an edge in the run game. A couple of years ago when you had Melvin Gordon and Javonte both have 900 yards in a season, that was probably the next best, where you really felt like you had a good rushing attack. But even that, your ability to get 3rd and 1s weren't great. Melvin's fumbling wasn't great. And so, if RJ Harvey really can be a home run hitter, which this team has not really had since Phil at that position, I think that would probably be my 1B. Like who statistically, right? Like fantasy football wise, Evan Ingram would probably be the one offensive player I would get for sure. And then I think RJ Harvey will be a guy that will have every opportunity to get his fill. They will use a running back by committee, but I think he's a guy that they will intentionally try and get him the ball in a variety of ways. I don't know. Audric's probably not going to be a guy that you're going to highlight in offensive packages. He's going to be put your head down and go get us 4 yards kind of guy. And he'll have good games, I bet, if he holds on to the ball. Jaleel, if he continue, he'll have an opportunity to make some plays, but not guys that will get featured and game plan for with opportunities to take advantage. So I think those two guys will. To be honest, if Cortland doesn't get a contract before the season, I would believe he's not going to be a guy that they're going to really try and worry about getting the ball to. If he does, then I absolutely think he would be a guy that will be a big part of that offense. And so, just fantasy football wise, but I think the other two gentlemen on defense, I think the Broncos will be a top 3 defense barring catastrophic things occurring.
Right.
I think that they are much deeper defense in all 3 levels than they have been in a while. So I look forward to that, but I think Evan Ingram would be my 1A. Harvey be my 1B.
Yeah, I think those are the right answers. Harvey to me, it's just it's just an empty, it's just a vacant position, right? Like it's not to say that you could plug anyone into that 100%. Position, and it's
like nowhere to go but up. Nowhere to go but up from there. So whoever is going to be the Rockies' next manager.
Yeah, so by default, I think that's the correct answer. Same with tight end, right? It's the same field. It's like there was a vacancy. We needed a body. We needed an athlete, someone who had some upside, or at least giving some upside to this offense. I think Hufanga might end up being one of the best moves, barring injury. And I think he ended up kind of becoming the quarterback of this defense. And it's something that I'm excited to watch. And I think it's something that maybe this team had missed previously. I think that maybe without back if he's healthy, he can assume that role for the team, and I think that in a lot of ways could be a good option. But I think Funga plays the game physically that you want to be able to play moving forward. You want them to be able to assert themselves a little bit more. Obviously, your defensive line didn't have issues with that. And a lot of ways, your secondary, like I played well, but I wouldn't say they were a dominant force last year. I'd say they were good, definitely above average to well above average. But I don't think physicality defense was really known for. I think they were known for giving up and on mistakes. I think in that and bring up level to guy, and Hufanga is a guy that is going to put his body out there playing. He's going to put his body on the line. He's going to have the opportunity to kind of back this group and kind of be hype man too, right? I mean, I think some guys, just the way that they play is enough for a change in that locker room, a change on the field, a game, how much intensity that rest of the team is bringing. And I think that Hufanga, I think, has the potential to be that for the Denver Broncos, kind of that catalyst, that upset physicality. So I'll be keeping a close eye on him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Hufanga boy through and through. I think his presence, I think even just you add the leadership component to each level, right? You have Patrick Surtain in the cornerback room. If you want to separate it out like that, you have Hufanga and Brandon Jones as your safeties. Both guys have played really good football at that level. Alex Singleton comes back, who's been a really good player. Dre Greenlaw, who is a really good player. You bring back DJ Jones up front, right? And then, really it's like the youngest group is that Cooper and Benito, like Zach Allen is like, you got dudes in each of the position groups. I mean, you have what, 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that have been all pros on your defense. You look at Benito, Zach Allen, Hufanga, and Surtain, right? And then, I mean, that's a pretty awesome spot to be at. And I think a guy like Hufanga, who his excitement when you hear him his interview is, I'm excited to come to the team and help other guys make plays, right? Like getting guys in the right spot, taking advantage of that. If I got to go sacrifice myself on a blitz to free up another guy, like I'm going to go do it. You don't hear that a lot from like a 5'10", 200-pound safety. It's like, I'll do whatever it takes to get the ball. It doesn't have to be me. I'm excited, for us to be able to do all of that. So, yeah, I like it. Like, to be out there's, if we would have said 5 different guys, I would have been like, yep, could be, yep. I think even I appreciate it. Vic to relap, even the Crenshaw, the punter, having an asset of a guy that, can pin teams, successfully more often with this defense, take advantage of the altitude, etc. Like that itself. When was the last time we felt like you had a weapon at punter, right? Where it's like there's some teams that traditionally are usually going to be the better teams when their special teams are an asset. And so we had much improved special teams over the last 2 years. And then, you think if you get an uptick in the punting game to complement the defense, I think that'll be great. So with that, then, question that we need you to answer, sir. Is this the year that the Denver Broncos unseat Kansas City Chiefs as AFC West champions for the first time since 2015?
Yeah, I'll try and be transparent.
I will give you the right to when we do our prediction, when we do our game by gamers, I'll give you a chance to take it back. But I want to know.
I think that five game difference between teams last season was a bit of a facade. I think that we will be closer. I don't know that we'll win the division. I don't know. I'll have to see what this team can look like as the season goes on. I will throw it back to you, though, since my audio is hot garbage today, and I apologize. What do you think the Broncos have done? Have they done enough to close that gap?
Yeah. I think in looking at the offseason, right? Like who had a better offseason? The Broncos or the Chiefs? And I look at like their position groups. And Mike Clay comes out with an article every year and just the projections of each team. And without even going to Kansas City first, just, has the Broncos ranked as the 8th best team in the NFL. So I'm not even going to look at yet about Kansas City. And I think that's even with somewhat of a regression statistically from Bo Nix, but you see an elevated, run game. You got RJ Harvey, who comes in and provides a spark. I think a more consistent play from Jaleel, etc. And so there's that. And I think if they come in as the 8th best team with an A overall offseason, and he has Kansas City ranked as the 6th best team, so projected 9.9 win total, and the Broncos at 9.7. I think that's just that gap is smaller. The Chargers, who the Broncos struggled against last year, but the Chiefs didn't. You think that will kind of even-ish a little bit, right? And so even if the Broncos, they lost both games to the Chargers last year, so even if they don't improve, got to think that the Chargers are now more equipped to at least get one from the Chiefs. The Raiders too, they'll be improved, and I think the Broncos get a 3rd place schedule, which got leaked out today. And looking at it, we'll do our schedule predictions next time. I feel pretty good about stuff. And so, games aren't won in May, but I think this is and I mean this really, to me, this is the most susceptible that team has been, that the Chiefs have been in a while. And I think at some point, even, John Elway, during his run in the AFC West, didn't win the AFC West every year. So Tom Brady got hurt one time and they lost the AFC West or AFC East. And so, we'll go over it schedule line by line, just in case. So I don't want to get too boastful, but I do think that this is the year that this team, at minimum, when we look into December, that the Chiefs are going to have to play every game this year. Let's say that, at minimum, they're going to have to play it out. And I think that the Broncos are going to be a prime candidate for that. I bet the Chargers are saying something pretty similar. Thought that they had a good draft, but I don't think any team helped themselves more than the Broncos. And considering where they were at and being ahead of the curve, I think having a solid draft, having a phenomenal free agency period, I think there's no reason to not think that. And now you get 9 home games. This is that year where you have more games at home. 3rd place schedule, all the stuff. I think I'm pretty bullish, and not even homer excitement. I think it's going to be a really, really good football team.
I agree. I think.
Well, we appreciate all of you. Yeah, it's exciting. Well, yeah, we're going to dive into it a ton next time. Obviously, we appreciate everyone. Grace and patience. Sometimes tech is awesome, sometimes not. So whatever. It is what it is. It'll do what it do. Nuggets are going to win tomorrow night because I believe. Thanks, DNVR, for the fantastic shirt. OTAs are around the corner, and training camp is in 2 months, and holy crap, like this year has flown by. But we want to thank you all. We appreciate you. Be nice to each other. And if you want a hug, call JT.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work hard for the car, so that's why it's all tinted. Wait a minute, had a real late night, woke up with my